The morning sun cast long shadows across the military airfield as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos approached the flight line. Her combat boots crunched against the gravel as she walked with purpose toward the sleek Black Hawk helicopter that would take her unit into the field. The aircraft sat like a mechanical predator, its rotors folded back, waiting for the mission that lay ahead. Maria had earned her place on this elite search and rescue team through years of rigorous training and unwavering dedication. She had served 3 tours overseas, saved countless lives, and proven herself time and again in the most challenging situations. Her medical training was exceptional, her tactical skills sharp, and her ability to remain calm under pressure had become legendary among her peers. As she approached the aircraft, her equipment bag slung over her shoulder, she noticed the crew chief standing near the helicopter's side door. Sergeant First Class Thompson was a veteran with over 15 years of service, known for his strict adherence to protocol and his no-nonsense attitude. His weathered face bore the marks of countless missions, and his eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen both the best and worst of military service. Thompson raised his hand as Maria drew near, his expression stern and unyielding. "Hold on there, Santos," he called out, his voice carrying the authority of rank and experience. "I need to see your authorization for this mission." Maria paused, her brow furrowing slightly. She had been briefed the night before and her commanding officer had specifically assigned her to this critical rescue operation. A team of civilian researchers had gone missing in hostile territory, and time was running out. Every moment counted, and she knew her medical expertise could mean the difference between life and death for the missing personnel. "Sergeant First Class, I was assigned to this mission by Captain Rodriguez," Maria replied, her voice steady and professional. "My orders are in the system, and I'm ready to deploy." Thompson shook his head, his stance firm and blocking her path to the helicopter. "I don't care what Captain Rodriguez told you. I haven't seen any paperwork for a female medic on this mission. This is a combat operation, and we need to follow proper procedures." The word stung, but Maria maintained her composure. She had faced this kind of resistance before, though it had become less common as she had proven herself repeatedly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her mission orders, printed and signed by her commanding officer. "Here are my orders, Sergeant First Class," she said, extending the documents toward Thompson. "Everything is in order." Thompson barely glanced at the papers before shaking his head again. "These look irregular to me. I can't allow you on this aircraft without proper verification from higher command. You'll need to go back to headquarters and get this sorted out." Maria's heart sank as she realized what was happening. The mission brief had been clear about the time-sensitive nature of the operation. The missing researchers had been out of contact for over 18 hours, and weather conditions in the search area were deteriorating rapidly. Any delay could be catastrophic. Around them, other members of the rescue team were conducting their pre-flight preparations. The pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Jenkins, was running through his checklist methodically. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Morrison, was reviewing the flight route and weather reports. 2 other team members, both male soldiers, had already loaded their gear and were waiting inside the aircraft. "Sergeant First Class," Maria said, her voice taking on a more urgent tone, "with respect, time is critical here. Those civilians need immediate medical attention if we find them, and I'm the most qualified medic available for this mission." Thompson crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "The most qualified medic on base is Corporal Williams, and he's already assigned to another mission. I'm sure headquarters can find someone else suitable for this operation." Maria knew Corporal Williams well. He was competent, but he lacked her specialized training in trauma medicine and her experience in hostile environments. More importantly, he wasn't available, and the mission couldn't wait for a replacement to be found and briefed. "Sir, I've completed over 40 successful missions," Maria pressed on, her frustration carefully controlled. "My training and experience make me uniquely qualified for this specific operation. The missing personnel include a female researcher who may require gender-specific medical care." "That's not my concern," Thompson replied curtly. "My concern is following proper protocol and ensuring this mission goes off without any complications. Adding an unauthorized person to the manifest creates unnecessary risks." The sound of approaching footsteps caused both Maria and Thompson to turn their heads. Master Sergeant Davis, one of the most respected non-commissioned officers on the base, was walking toward them with a concerned expression. He had overheard parts of their conversation and sensed the tension in the air. "What seems to be the problem here?" Davis asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Thompson straightened slightly, recognizing the senior NCO's rank. "Master Sergeant, I'm preventing an unauthorized person from boarding this aircraft. Staff Sergeant Santos claims she's assigned to this mission, but her paperwork doesn't look right to me." Davis looked at Maria, then back at Thompson. "Have you contacted Mission Control to verify her orders?" "I don't think that's necessary," Thompson replied. "The manifest I received didn't include her name, so she shouldn't be here." "The manifest was updated last night," Maria interjected. "Captain Rodriguez added me to the team after Sergeant Williams was reassigned to the emergency medevac at the main hospital." Davis nodded thoughtfully. He had heard about the last-minute personnel changes that had affected several missions that week. The base was operating at full capacity, with multiple operations running simultaneously, and adjustments to team compositions were common. "Thompson," Davis said, "why don't you radio Mission Control and get confirmation? We can't afford to delay this mission over administrative confusion." Thompson hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the suggestion. "Master Sergeant, I've been running flight operations for 8 years, and I know when something doesn't feel right. This whole situation seems irregular." Maria could see the doubt in Davis's eyes as he processed Thompson's concerns. The military ran on trust and proper procedures, and any uncertainty about mission personnel was taken seriously. She realized she needed to provide more concrete evidence of her assignment. "Master Sergeant," she said, pulling out her phone, "I can call Captain Rodriguez right now. He can confirm my assignment directly." Before Davis could respond, Thompson stepped forward. "That won't be necessary. I'm the crew chief for this aircraft, and I have the final say on who boards. Staff Sergeant Santos is not getting on this helicopter today." The finality in Thompson's voice made it clear that he wasn't going to budge. Maria felt a mix of anger and frustration building inside her, but she forced herself to remain professional. She had worked too hard and come too far to let her emotions derail her career now. As the three soldiers stood in tense silence, the sound of another helicopter approaching filled the air. A second Black Hawk was coming in for landing, kicking up dust and debris as it touched down on the adjacent landing pad. The aircraft bore the markings of a high-ranking officer's transport, and Maria could see through the windows that it carried several passengers. The rotors began to slow as the engines wound down, and the side door opened. A figure in combat fatigues emerged, followed by several other personnel. Even from a distance, Maria could see the silver eagles on the figure's collar that marked him as a full colonel. "Looks like the old man is making his rounds," Davis commented, referring to the base commander who was known for his surprise visits to operational areas. Thompson's demeanor shifted slightly as he recognized the approaching officer. Colonel Harrison was known throughout the base as a fair but demanding leader who expected nothing less than excellence from his personnel. He had a reputation for asking tough questions and getting to the bottom of any issues that affected mission readiness. As Colonel Harrison walked toward their position, Maria made a quick decision. She would take her concerns directly to him if necessary. The missing researchers couldn't wait for bureaucratic procedures to work themselves out, and she was confident that her assignment was legitimate. The colonel's presence on the flight line at this critical moment seemed like more than just coincidence. Maria had heard that he took a personal interest in all rescue operations, particularly those involving civilian personnel. His own daughter worked as a humanitarian aid worker in conflict zones, and some said this gave him a special sensitivity to missions like the one they were about to undertake. Thompson noticed the colonel's approach and quickly tried to wrap up the confrontation. "Santos, you need to step away from this aircraft immediately. Go back to headquarters and get this mess sorted out through proper channels." But Maria stood her ground, her eyes fixed on the approaching colonel. She had served under his command for 2 years and had always found him to be someone who valued competence over politics. If anyone would listen to her side of the story and make a fair judgment, it would be Colonel Harrison. The moment of truth was approaching, and Maria knew that the next few minutes would determine not only her participation in this critical mission but possibly the fate of the missing researchers who were counting on her expertise to bring them home safely. The morning sun continued to climb higher in the sky, casting shorter shadows as the confrontation reached its climax. The Black Hawk's engines remained silent, waiting for a crew that was complete and ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead in the mission zone. Time was running out, and decisions needed to be made quickly. Colonel Harrison was now close enough that Maria could see his expression clearly. His weathered face showed the strain of command, but his eyes held the sharp intelligence that had earned him respect throughout the military hierarchy. As he approached their small group, Maria knew that everything she had worked for was about to be put to the ultimate test. Colonel Harrison's boots hit the tarmac with measured precision as he approached the small group gathered near the Black Hawk. His keen eyes immediately assessed the situation, taking in the body language and positioning of the three soldiers. Years of leadership experience had taught him to read tension in the ranks, and he could sense that something significant was unfolding. "Good morning," the colonel said, his voice carrying easily across the distance between them. "I trust everything is proceeding according to schedule with this mission?" Thompson immediately came to attention, his earlier confidence wavering slightly in the presence of such high-ranking authority. "Yes, sir, Colonel. We're just working through some last-minute personnel issues." Colonel Harrison's gaze moved deliberately from Thompson to Davis, then settled on Maria. His expression remained neutral, but Maria caught something in his eyes that suggested he was processing more information than he was letting on. "Personnel issues," the colonel repeated, his tone indicating that he expected a more detailed explanation. "With a time-sensitive rescue mission, I would hope such matters were resolved well in advance." Maria took a small step forward, recognizing this as her opportunity to present her case directly to the commanding officer. "Sir, I'm Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, assigned to this rescue mission by Captain Rodriguez. There seems to be some confusion about my authorization to participate." The colonel's eyes focused intently on Maria, and she felt as though he was evaluating not just her words but her entire presence and demeanor. She had heard that Colonel Harrison had an exceptional memory for details and personnel, and she hoped that her service record would speak for itself. "Santos," he said thoughtfully, as if the name was triggering a memory. "Weren't you the medic who treated the casualties from the helicopter crash last month? The incident near Sector 7? "Yes, sir," Maria replied, surprised that he remembered such a specific detail. 3 crew members with multiple trauma injuries. We were able to stabilize them for transport to the main hospital." Thompson shifted uncomfortably beside them, clearly not expecting the conversation to take this direction. His original plan had been to simply refuse Maria's boarding and send her away before any higher authority became involved. "I remember reading the after-action report," Colonel Harrison continued, his tone becoming more engaged. "The flight surgeon noted that your quick thinking and advanced trauma protocols likely saved at least 2 lives that day. Exceptional work under pressure." Maria felt a surge of validation, but she maintained her professional composure. "Thank you, sir. I was just doing my job." "Your job," the colonel mused, which, if I recall correctly, involves specialized training in combat medicine and wilderness survival. Training that cost the Army considerable resources and time to provide. Master Sergeant Davis seized the opportunity to interject. "Sir, Staff Sergeant Santos claims she was assigned to this mission last night when Sergeant Williams was reassigned to emergency duties at the hospital." Colonel Harrison nodded, his understanding of the base's operational tempo evident in his expression. "Yes, I authorized that reassignment myself. Williams was needed for a critical patient who required his specific expertise in cardiac procedures." Thompson's face paled slightly as he realized that the colonel was personally aware of the personnel changes that had led to Maria's assignment to the mission. "Now then," Colonel Harrison said, turning his attention back to Thompson, "what exactly is the nature of the confusion regarding Staff Sergeant Santos's participation in this mission?" Thompson cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, the manifest I received didn't include her name, and her paperwork seemed irregular." I was following standard security protocols by refusing her access to the aircraft." The colonel's expression remained neutral, but Maria could sense his growing interest in the details of the situation. "Show me this paperwork that appears irregular." Maria immediately produced her mission orders and handed them to Colonel Harrison. He examined them carefully, his experienced eyes scanning every detail of the documentation. "These orders appear to be completely in order," he said after a thorough review. "Properly signed by Captain Rodriguez, with all necessary authorization codes and mission details." "What specifically did you find irregular about them, Sergeant First Class Thompson?" Thompson fumbled for words, realizing that his objections were beginning to sound increasingly weak. "Well, sir, it just seemed unusual to have a female medic assigned to this type of combat mission at the last minute." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Maria felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had suspected all along that Thompson's objections were based on outdated attitudes rather than legitimate procedural concerns, but hearing it stated so directly was still jarring. Colonel Harrison's expression darkened almost imperceptibly, and, when he spoke again, his voice carried an edge of controlled authority. "Sergeant First Class Thompson, are you suggesting that gender is a relevant factor in determining a soldier's qualifications for a rescue mission?" "No, sir," Thompson replied quickly, realizing he had stepped into dangerous territory. "I just meant that it seemed like an unusual change to the mission parameters." "The only unusual aspect of this situation," Colonel Harrison said firmly, "is that a highly qualified medic is being prevented from participating in a mission for which she has been properly assigned and for which she is uniquely qualified." As the colonel spoke, his gaze shifted to Maria's uniform, and something caught his attention. His eyes focused on a small patch attached to her sleeve, just below her unit insignia. Maria followed his gaze and realized he was looking at the distinctive patch that marked her as a graduate of the Army's Advanced Trauma Life Support Program. The patch itself was unremarkable to most observers, a simple design featuring a medical cross surrounded by tactical elements. But Colonel Harrison recognized its significance immediately. Only a small percentage of military medics earned the right to wear that particular patch, and it required completion of one of the most demanding medical training programs the Army offered. "That's an ATLS patch," Colonel Harrison said, his tone carrying a new level of respect. "How long did it take you to complete that program, Staff Sergeant?" 18 months, sir," Maria replied. "Including the field training exercises and the final certification exam." Colonel Harrison nodded slowly, clearly impressed. He had attempted to get several medics from his previous commands into that program, but few had met the rigorous prerequisites, and fewer still had successfully completed it. "For those who may not be familiar," the colonel said, addressing Thompson and Davis, "the Advanced Trauma Life Support Program has a completion rate of less than 30%. It represents the highest level of battlefield medical training available to enlisted personnel." Thompson's objections were beginning to crumble under the weight of Maria's credentials and the colonel's obvious respect for her qualifications. Furthermore, Colonel Harrison continued, "The missing personnel in this rescue mission include a female researcher who was conducting medical studies in the field. Having a medic with advanced trauma training who can also address any gender-specific medical concerns seems not just appropriate, but essential." Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her as she realized that the colonel not only understood her qualifications but also recognized the strategic importance of her participation in the mission. "Sir," Thompson said, making one last attempt to maintain his position, "I was simply following established protocols for mission security." "Protocol," Colonel Harrison replied, his voice taking on the tone of someone delivering a lesson, "is meant to ensure mission success, not to create arbitrary barriers that prevent our most qualified personnel from doing their jobs." The colonel then did something that surprised everyone present. He stepped closer to Maria and examined her patch more carefully, as if confirming something he had noticed from a distance. "This patch bears the gold border," he observed. "That indicates you not only completed the program but finished in the top 10% of your class." Maria nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and nervousness at being the center of so much attention. "Yes, sir. I was ranked third out of 47 candidates." "Outstanding," Colonel Harrison said, genuine admiration evident in his voice. "I've been trying to get more of our medics into that program for years." The training you received there is exactly what's needed for this type of high-risk rescue operation. The colonel stepped back and addressed the entire group with the authority of his rank and experience. Gentlemen, we have a time-sensitive mission with lives hanging in the balance. Staff Sergeant Santos is not only properly assigned to this mission, she is arguably the most qualified person on this base to handle the medical challenges we may encounter. Thompson realized that his position had become untenable, but he made one final attempt to maintain some authority in the situation. Sir, I understand the importance of the mission, but I still have concerns about the last-minute nature of her assignment. Colonel Harrison's patience was clearly running thin. Sergeant First Class, in combat operations, flexibility and adaptability are essential qualities. The ability to adjust personnel assignments based on changing circumstances is not a weakness in our system, it's a strength. Yes, sir, Thompson replied, his resistance finally collapsing under the weight of the colonel's authority and logic. Now then, Colonel Harrison said, turning back to Maria, I believe you have a mission to complete. Those researchers are counting on you and your team to bring them home safely. Maria felt a surge of gratitude and determination as she realized that the barrier that had stood between her and the mission was finally being removed. The colonel's recognition of her qualifications and his willingness to intervene on her behalf had validated years of hard work and dedication. Thank you, sir, she said, her voice steady and professional despite the emotions churning inside her. I won't let you down. Colonel Harrison smiled slightly, the first break in his serious demeanor since arriving on the scene. I have complete confidence in your abilities, Staff Sergeant. Now get out there and do what you do best. The Black Hawk's engines roared to life as Maria finally took her place inside the aircraft, her medical equipment secured and her mind focused on the mission ahead. The confrontation at the flight line had delayed them by nearly 20 minutes, but Colonel Harrison had personally ensured that Mission Control was aware of the circumstances and had adjusted their timeline accordingly. Chief Warrant Officer Jenkins completed his final pre-flight checks as the rotors began their rhythmic rotation. Through the aircraft's windows, Maria could see the colonel watching from a safe distance, his presence serving as a reminder of the importance of their mission and the confidence he had placed in her abilities. Thompson had grudgingly completed the loading procedures, his attitude noticeably different after the colonel's intervention. While he remained professional, Maria could sense that their relationship would require time and successful missions to fully repair. She focused instead on the task ahead, knowing that her performance on this mission would speak louder than any words. Lieutenant Morrison, the co-pilot, turned in his seat to address the team. Weather reports show deteriorating conditions in the search area. We've got about a 4-hour window before the storm front moves in and makes extraction impossible. The urgency in his voice underscored what everyone already knew: this mission had no room for error or delay. The missing research team had been out of contact for over 19 hours now, and every additional minute decreased their chances of survival. As the Black Hawk lifted off from the airfield, Maria reviewed the mission briefing materials one final time. The missing team consisted of 4 civilian researchers who had been conducting environmental studies in a remote mountainous region. Their last known position was approximately 60 miles northeast of the base, in terrain that was challenging even under ideal conditions. Dr. Sarah Chen, the team leader, was a marine biologist studying the effects of climate change on high-altitude ecosystems. Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Williams, was a geologist investigating soil composition in the region. The 2 graduate students with them, Jennifer Park and David Rodriguez, were working on their dissertations related to the research project. The team's satellite communicator had gone silent the previous afternoon, and their failure to check in at scheduled intervals had triggered the search and rescue protocols. Initial aerial reconnaissance had spotted their base camp, but there was no sign of the researchers themselves. Sergeant First Class Martinez, the team's communications specialist, was monitoring multiple radio frequencies as they flew toward the search area. Still no contact from the missing team, he reported. But I'm picking up some intermittent signals that might be from an emergency beacon. Maria felt her training kick in as she mentally prepared for various scenarios they might encounter. The researchers could be injured and unable to move, lost and disoriented, or trapped by environmental hazards. Each possibility required different medical interventions and evacuation procedures. The landscape below them gradually changed from the developed areas around the base to increasingly wild and mountainous terrain. Dense forests gave way to rocky slopes and narrow valleys that would make landing the Black Hawk extremely challenging. Maria could see why the research team had been drawn to this remote location. It was pristine wilderness largely untouched by human development. Coming up on the base camp location, Jenkins announced over the intercom. "I can see their tents and equipment, but no movement on the ground." Through the aircraft's side window, Maria could see the small cluster of bright-colored tents that marked the researchers' temporary home. Their vehicles were parked nearby, and equipment was scattered around the camp in what appeared to be an organized fashion. Nothing suggested a hasty departure or emergency evacuation. "Taking us down for a closer look," Jenkins said as he maneuvered the helicopter into a slow circle around the camp. "Martinez, any luck with radio contact?" "Negative on voice contact," Martinez replied, "but that emergency beacon signal is definitely getting stronger. It's coming from somewhere east of the camp, maybe half a mile into the tree line." Maria studied the terrain below, noting the dense forest canopy that would make visual spotting of the missing researchers nearly impossible from the air. If they were injured and unable to reach their camp, they could be anywhere in the vast wilderness that surrounded them. "There," called out Specialist Thompson, the team's search and rescue expert, pointing toward a break in the forest canopy. "I think I see something reflective about 400 meters east of the camp. Could be emergency equipment." Jenkins immediately adjusted their course, bringing the Black Hawk over the area Thompson had identified. As they hovered above the trees, Maria could see what appeared to be pieces of reflective emergency blankets spread out in a small clearing. "That's definitely a signal," she said, recognizing the deliberate pattern of the reflective material. "Someone down there is trying to get our attention." "I can see movement," Lieutenant Morrison announced, his voice carrying new urgency. "At least 2 people in the clearing. One appears to be waving." Maria felt her pulse quicken as she realized they had found the missing researchers. Now the real challenge would begin, determining their condition and getting them safely evacuated from the remote location. "Landing zone looks tight," Jenkins observed, studying the small clearing through his scope. "I can get us down, but it's going to be a precise insertion. Everyone needs to be ready to move quickly once we touch down." The descent into the forest clearing required all of Jenkins' considerable skill as a pilot. The trees formed a natural funnel that provided just enough space for the Black Hawk's rotor disc, with minimal margin for error. As they approached the ground, Maria could see the researchers more clearly, 2 figures standing near the edge of the clearing, waving frantically at the approaching aircraft. The moment the helicopter's wheels touched the forest floor, Maria was in motion. She grabbed her medical kit and jumped from the aircraft, her training taking over as she assessed the situation rapidly. The 2 researchers who had been signaling appeared to be Dr. Chan and David Rodriguez, both showing signs of exhaustion and exposure but apparently mobile. "Where are the others?" Maria called out as she approached them, her voice barely audible over the Black Hawk's engines. Dr. Chen pointed deeper into the forest, her face etched with worry and fatigue. "Jennifer fell down a ravine yesterday evening. Marcus is with her, but she's badly injured. We couldn't move her safely." Maria's mind immediately began processing the medical implications. A fall in this terrain could result in anything from minor bruises to life-threatening internal injuries. The fact that they hadn't been able to move the injured graduate student suggested significant trauma. "How far?" she asked, already calculating the time and resources needed for extraction. "About a quarter mile," Dr. Chen replied. "The ravine is maybe 15 feet deep, and the sides are too steep to carry her out. Marcus has first aid training, but she needs real medical attention." Maria nodded and turned back toward the helicopter, where her teammates were already unloading rescue equipment. They would need ropes, a stretcher, and possibly additional medical supplies depending on the severity of Jennifer's injuries. Specialist Thompson approached with the rescue gear, his expression focused and professional. "What's the situation?" "One injured researcher in a ravine, quarter mile east," Maria replied quickly. "We'll need full extraction equipment and the trauma kit." As the team prepared for the technical rescue, Maria took a moment to examine Dr. Chen and David more thoroughly. Both showed signs of dehydration and mild hypothermia, but nothing that couldn't wait until they had dealt with the more serious casualty. "When did you last eat or drink?" she asked Dr. Chen while checking her pulse and responsiveness. "Yesterday morning," Dr. Chen admitted. "We used most of our water trying to help Jennifer, and we didn't want to leave her to go back to camp." Maria handed her a water bottle and energy bar from her kit. "Small sips," she instructed. "Your body needs to readjust gradually." The sound of the Black Hawk's engines winding down provided a momentary respite from the noise, allowing for easier communication. Jenkins would keep the aircraft ready for immediate departure once they had recovered all 4 researchers. "Lead the way," Maria told Dr. Chen. "And stay close to me. We need to move fast but safely." The trek through the dense forest tested everyone's endurance and navigation skills. The underbrush was thick and tangled, making progress slow and difficult. Maria could hear the distant sound of running water, which suggested they were approaching the ravine where Jennifer and Dr. Williams were located. As they pushed through a final line of trees, the ravine opened up before them, a narrow cut in the forest floor that was deeper and more treacherous than Dr. Chen's description had suggested. Maria could see 2 figures at the bottom, Dr. Williams kneeling beside a still form wrapped in what appeared to be emergency blankets. "Jennifer!" Dr. Chen called down into the ravine. "We brought help." Dr. Williams looked up, relief evident even from their elevated position. "She's conscious but in significant pain. I think she may have broken ribs and possibly internal injuries." Maria assessed the tactical situation quickly. The ravine's walls were steep and unstable, composed of loose soil and rock that would make a traditional rope rescue dangerous for both the victim and the rescuers. "Thompson," she called to the rescue specialist, "we're going to need the technical rescue rig. This is going to be a complex extraction." As her teammates prepared the equipment, Maria focused on establishing communication with the injured researcher. "Jennifer, can you hear me? I'm Staff Sergeant Santos, and I'm here to get you out of there." A weak voice drifted up from the ravine bottom. "I can hear you. It hurts to breathe, and I can't move my left leg." The symptoms suggested possible rib fractures and a lower extremity injury, both of which would complicate the extraction process. Maria knew she would need to rappel down into the ravine to properly assess and stabilize Jennifer before they could safely move her. "I'm coming down to you," Maria called out. "Dr. Williams, I need you to clear some space so I can work." As she prepared her rappelling equipment, Maria reflected on the chain of events that had brought her to this moment. The confrontation with Thompson at the flight line seemed like a distant memory now, but she understood that her performance on this mission would define how she was perceived by her peers and superiors for years to come. The lives of 4 researchers depended on her skills and judgment. Everything she had trained for, all the obstacles she had overcome, had led to this moment in a remote forest where her expertise would mean the difference between success and tragedy. Maria secured her rappelling gear and began her controlled descent into the ravine, her medical kit attached to her harness. The walls of the narrow gorge were unstable, with loose rocks and soil that shifted dangerously under pressure. Every movement had to be calculated and precise to avoid causing a collapse that could injure everyone at the bottom. As she reached the ravine floor, Maria immediately went to work assessing Jennifer's condition. The young graduate student was pale and obviously in considerable pain, but she was alert and responsive, positive signs that suggested her injuries, while serious, were potentially survivable with proper treatment. "Jennifer, I'm going to examine you now," Maria said in a calm, reassuring voice. "Tell me if anything I do causes increased pain." Dr. Williams moved aside to give Maria room to work, but stayed close enough to assist if needed. "She fell approximately 12 feet and landed on her left side against those rocks," he explained, pointing to a cluster of sharp stone formations. "She's been in and out of consciousness, and she's complained consistently about breathing difficulties and leg pain." Maria's experienced hands quickly but gently probed Jennifer's ribs, feeling for the telltale signs of fractures. She found definitive evidence of at least 2 broken ribs on the left side, and possibly a third. More concerning was the subtle distension of Jennifer's abdomen, which could indicate internal bleeding. "Jennifer, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your pain right now?" Maria asked while checking her patient's pulse and blood pressure. "Maybe a 7, Jennifer replied weakly. "But it gets worse when I try to move or take deep breaths." The symptoms confirmed Maria's initial assessment. The rib fractures were serious enough, but the possibility of internal injuries made Jennifer's situation potentially life-threatening. They needed to evacuate her quickly, but any movement would have to be extremely careful to avoid exacerbating her injuries. Maria reached for her radio to contact the team above. "Thompson, I need the basket stretcher and full spinal immobilization kit. We're dealing with multiple rib fractures and possible internal bleeding. This is going to be a technical lift with medical complications." "Copy that," Thompson replied. "Equipment is ready. How do you want to handle the extraction?" Maria studied the ravine walls and considered their options. The traditional method would be to secure Jennifer to a backboard and lift her straight up using a pulley system. However, the unstable walls and her injuries made that approach risky. "We're going to need a horizontal extraction," she decided. The ravine extends another 50 meters to the east where it opens up to ground level. "We'll stabilize her here and carry her to the easier exit point." It was a longer route, but it would be safer for both the patient and the rescuers. Maria began the delicate process of preparing Jennifer for transport, carefully immobilizing her spine and ribs while monitoring her vital signs for any indication of deteriorating condition. Above them, she could hear her teammates repositioning the helicopter to a better location for pickup. The storm front that Lieutenant Morrison had mentioned earlier was beginning to move in, and the first drops of rain were starting to fall through the forest canopy. "Dr. Williams," Maria said while working, "I need you to help me stabilize her left leg. From what I can see, it's probably fractured, but we need to prevent any further displacement during transport." Working together, they carefully splinted Jennifer's leg using materials from Maria's medical kit. The graduate student remained conscious throughout the procedure, which was encouraging, but Maria could see that her condition was gradually weakening. "Jennifer, stay with me," Maria said firmly. "We're going to get you out of here and to a hospital where they can take proper care of you." The process of moving Jennifer through the ravine to the exit point was painstaking and exhausting. Maria and Dr. Williams took turns carrying the stretcher while navigating the uneven terrain and avoiding obstacles that could cause jarring movements. Every step had to be coordinated to maintain the stability of their patient. As they finally emerged from the ravine at its eastern terminus, Maria could see the Black Hawk had repositioned to a small meadow approximately 100 meters away. The rain was falling more steadily now, turning the forest floor slippery and making their progress even more challenging. Thompson and Martinez were waiting at the helicopter with additional medical equipment and thermal blankets to protect Jennifer from the increasingly hostile weather. As they transferred her to the aircraft, Maria continued monitoring her vital signs and adjusting her treatment protocols. "Blood pressure is dropping slightly," Maria reported to Jenkins over the intercom. "We need to get to the hospital as quickly as possible." "Understood," the pilot replied. "Medical control has been notified, and they're preparing a trauma team for our arrival." As the Black Hawk lifted off from the mountain meadow, Maria reflected on the complexity of the mission they had just completed. The technical rescue had required not only medical expertise but also tactical coordination and adaptability under pressure. Every member of the team had performed exceptionally, proving that proper training and teamwork could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. Dr. Chan and David Rodriguez, who had been treated for dehydration and minor injuries, sat quietly in the aircraft, still processing their ordeal. Dr. Williams remained close to Jennifer, holding her hand and providing emotional support during the flight to safety. "ETA to base hospital is 12 minutes, Lieutenant Morrison announced. Medical team is standing by." Maria used the remaining flight time to complete her documentation of Jennifer's injuries and treatment, ensuring that the hospital staff would have complete information for their assessment and care. Her advanced trauma training had proven invaluable in managing the complex medical situation, validating Colonel Harrison's confidence in her abilities. As the base came into view, Maria could see the medical team waiting on the hospital landing pad. The sight of the prepared trauma bay and experienced medical personnel gave her confidence that Jennifer would receive the best possible care for her injuries. The landing and transfer to the hospital happened with practiced efficiency. Jennifer was conscious and stable as she was wheeled into the emergency department. Her vital signs improved from where they had been in the ravine. The successful rescue was a testament to the skill and dedication of everyone involved. Later that evening, after completing all the necessary paperwork and debriefing sessions, Maria found herself back at the flight line where her day had begun so dramatically. The Black Hawk sat silently on the tarmac, its mission complete and its crew deservedly proud of their achievement. Colonel Harrison appeared beside her, his presence as commanding as it had been that morning, but his demeanor noticeably more relaxed. "Outstanding work today, Staff Sergeant," he said simply. "The doctors tell me that Jennifer is expected to make a full recovery. Your quick assessment and treatment protocols likely saved her life." Maria felt a deep sense of satisfaction at the news. "Thank you, sir. It was a team effort." "Indeed it was," the colonel agreed. "But leadership in crisis situations comes from individuals who have the knowledge, skills, and judgment to make critical decisions under pressure. You demonstrated all of those qualities today." As they spoke, Thompson approached them hesitantly. His earlier confrontational demeanor had been replaced by something that looked remarkably like respect and, perhaps, a degree of embarrassment. "Staff Sergeant Santos," he said formally, "I owe you an apology. My actions this morning were unprofessional and could have compromised the mission." Maria studied his face, seeing genuine remorse in his expression. "Sergeant First Class, we all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and do better next time." Thompson nodded gratefully. "I've learned something important today about judging people based on their qualifications rather than my own preconceptions." Colonel Harrison observed the exchange with approval. "Sergeant First Class Thompson, I trust this experience will inform your future decisions regarding mission personnel." "Yes, sir," Thompson replied firmly. "It absolutely will." As the sun set behind the mountains that had been the scene of their rescue mission, Maria felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The obstacles that had seemed so insurmountable that morning had been overcome through persistence, skill, and the support of leaders who recognized merit over prejudice. The patch on her sleeve, the one that had caught Colonel Harrison's attention and changed the entire trajectory of her day, represented more than just technical training. It symbolized her commitment to excellence, her willingness to push beyond conventional boundaries, and her determination to serve others regardless of the personal cost. Over the following weeks, word of the successful rescue mission spread throughout the base. Maria's role in saving Jennifer's life became well known, and her reputation as a skilled and dedicated medic was firmly established. The confrontation at the flight line was remembered not as an obstacle, but as a turning point that demonstrated the importance of recognizing and utilizing the best qualified personnel regardless of gender or other irrelevant factors. 6 months later, Maria received orders for a promotion to Sergeant First Class, along with an assignment to train other medics in advanced trauma procedures. The recommendation letter, signed by Colonel Harrison himself, specifically cited her performance during the mountain rescue mission as evidence of her leadership potential and technical expertise. Jennifer Park made a complete recovery from her injuries and returned to complete her graduate studies. She maintained contact with Maria, crediting the medic's skill and professionalism with saving not only her life but also her ability to continue her academic career. Dr. Chen's research team published their findings about high-altitude ecosystem changes, with a dedication acknowledging the search and rescue team that had ensured their safe return. The dedication specifically mentioned Maria's critical role in the mission's success. Thompson, true to his word, became one of Maria's strongest supporters on the base. He volunteered to work with her on subsequent missions and became an advocate for recognizing qualified personnel regardless of traditional stereotypes. Their professional relationship evolved into one of mutual respect and effective teamwork. The Advanced Trauma Life Support patch that had played such a crucial role in Colonel Harrison's recognition of Maria's qualifications became a symbol of excellence throughout the base medical corps. More medics applied for and completed the rigorous training program, raising the overall level of medical capability for the entire unit. Maria's story became part of the informal history of the base, told to new arrivals as an example of how persistence, skill, and proper leadership could overcome institutional barriers. Her success opened doors for other qualified personnel who might have faced similar obstacles, creating a more inclusive and effective military organization. Years later, when Maria had achieved the rank of Master Sergeant and was serving as the senior medical instructor for the entire base, she would sometimes visit the flight line where her career-defining moment had occurred. Standing beside the Black Hawks that continued to carry out critical missions, she would remember the morning when a small patch on her sleeve had changed everything. The lesson she had learned that day, that excellence speaks louder than prejudice, and that true leaders recognize merit wherever they find it, became a guiding principle throughout her distinguished career. She never forgot the importance of advocating for herself and others, or the power of perseverance in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The Black Hawk that had carried them on that rescue mission continued to serve faithfully, its crew compartment bearing silent witness to countless other missions and the brave men and women who dedicated their lives to serving others. And, somewhere in the vast wilderness where they had saved 4 lives, the forest continued to grow and change, indifferent to human drama but forever marked by a moment when skill, courage, and determination had triumphed over adversity.